In the ancient city of Calabar, the Old Residency Museum is not just a colonial antiquity, it is a silent witness of Nigeria's encounter with trade, empire, and transformation.
In this second part of our journey, we uncover stories preserved within the walls, linking past struggles with the lessons of today.
My name is Vine Henshaw.
My name is Imabasi Isong, and remember, this is brought to you by Unical 103.5 FM.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, boss.
My name is Vine Henshaw.
Okay.
I'm from Unical 103.5 FM.
Yeah.
What's your name?
My name is Collins Essie. I work here in the museum, the National Museum, Calabar.
Okay, Collins, nice to meet you.
Thank you.
So I learned that you're going to be our curator for today and take us through the whole artifact right here.
Sure.
Lead the way, let's go.
Okay, let's come in. Welcome once again to the National Museum, Calabar.
Thank you.
Yes, I will run you through what we have in these galleries. We have about 2 downstairs and 4 upstairs. So we start
6.
basically, of course, you said?
That's 6 galleries.
Yes, galleries altogether. Yes. Now, there's a prefab building that was brought in from Britain in part and assembled here in Old Calabar in 1884. So it has been standing here for 141 years now. Practically made of wood, apart from the pillars made of cast iron, you can see yourself. So it was declared a national monument at the time, number 20, in 1956 at the time. And later it was opened to the public precisely 19th of August, 1986.
19th of August, it would be... Tomorrow's 19th, so we're almost, we're almost on track.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to run you through what we have from here.
Okay.
So we'll start with early European contacts. Of course, the Europeans started coming to Africa from the early 15th century, basically for trade potentials. You know, they traveled to trade and also for exploitation. So when they came to Africa, and basically their first city was Guinea. When they went to Guinea, they went to the Benin, from there they went to the Benin Kingdom and established a relationship there. And of course, they converted their chiefs, like the Oba of Benin, converted their chiefs and also their chapels there. And also took their sons abroad and trained them. And they got that Christian education. They came back with that priesthood education. And when they came back, of course, with wives. So the best description the Benin people at the time gave about these explorers and these traders were just carvings like this. Since there were no cameras to take these people at the time, so they had perfect carvings like this, you know, to prove that at the time they came. So we have portraits of great people like a man called Christopher Columbus, the man who discovered the West Indies, of course, was the New World. You know, we also have a portrait of a man called Prince Henry the Navigator. You know, these guys travel through using simple instruments like the sectine, the compass, and hourglass. When they came, they brought a lot of things in exchange for what we had. I'm going to show you in a bit. Now we have this. We have this. We have the bangle. We have the Venetian bits. We have the metal swords. We also have the whiskey drink. All of this were brought in exchange for different items like palm oil, and of course, eventually slaves.
Yes, because I learned about that, you know, when I was at the Slave Trade Museum, I think a few years ago, and I realized that some slaves were traded for this.
Will you call it petty items?
It is now, but then obviously were very, very important items then, but looking at it now, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And let's go beyond just these items they brought. I told you about the New World that was discovered by a man called Christopher Columbus. Okay. And, you know, they needed people to work in this big plantation. There were no machines to work in this plantation at the time. So they used humans, of course, as forced labor to achieve whatever they wanted at the time. So they came to Africa. The reason why they came to Africa because labor was cheap and these guys could be easily replaced. And stubborn ones, of course, obviously were tied like this. After a while, they became weak and they were carried along. And chains and shackles like this were used to bind their hands and their legs together. And this was how the movement was at the time. They were taken from the hinterlands, from villages to the coastal point where they finally carried to their destination. And they were brought to several markets. We have one at Eyon, or Dupani local government, the slave market. We have the other one at Esukumbak. Presently is no more a trade by barter. A slave trade market is now a trade by barter market. We come to a point called the transatlantic triangular trade, where manufactured goods were brought from Europe down to Africa, in exchange for these enslaved people. And from there were taken across the Atlantic Ocean to the West Indies, where they worked in their plantation. Of course, this started from the mid-16th century to the 18th century. This talked about the movement of slaves from their destination, or from the origin through the Atlantic Ocean to the West Indies, where they worked, and the raw materials they got from this plantation were taken to Europe and processed to different materials. So most of these materials were brought to Africa for more exchange, for more enslaved people. And stubborn slaves were, like I told you, were sold, as cattle to the highest bidder, and you can see the auctioneer and also the bidders. After a while, the preaching of equality for all men became a force to be reckoned with. So we had great people that fought against slave trade. We call them the abolitionists, obviously. So we have names like John Wesley, who was the founder of the Methodist Church, who used his platform to preach against this crime, of course. And we also have Gravel Sharp, who spearheaded a lot of movements against the abolition of slave trade. We also have a man called Thomas Clarkson, who also, as a cleric, showed a lot of facts how these slaves were maltreated. We also have William Wilberforce, who was a philanthropist and a politician who passed a lot of bills trying to abolish this act or this practice. But after a while, an act was passed in 1807 to abolish this law. So later it became a law, and to abolish this slave trade in 1807. So we have a map or statistics of slaves taken from Nigeria, or let's just put it West Africa. So our concern is Bight of Benin, which suggests Badagry, that's the Lagos area. Yeah. And we have Bight of Biafra, that's southern part of Nigeria. So if you put it, let's start with Benin, that's Lagos, it's about 11.3%. Then you talk about Calabar regions, about 30.1%. You put it together, about 41.4%. That's why we have a lot of slaves taken from Nigeria. Now, after slave trade was abolished in 1807, the next legal business became palm oil trade. Of course, it obviously coincided immediately after the abolition of slave trade. Palm oil trade became the boom at the time. Of course, it was the mainstay of the economy. So a lot of the Europeans came to buy this product. So they came in their large numbers, bringing their ship to buy this product. You can see how they came before trading stations were built. So they came in their numbers to buy palm oil from different traders. After, when they saw the power behind palm oil, when they saw the business was big at the time, trading stations were built around Cross River and Akwa Ibom at the time. You can see a portrait of the palm oil products being stored on the bank of the river. Now, this is another section of the gallery which talks about the British penetration and expansion in West Africa. Now, we have different explorers, traders, and missionaries that, I want to use the word invaded, but entered different regions at the time. Now, our concern is the eastern part of Nigeria, or the eastern southern part of Nigeria. Now, the church was established in early 1846, a missionary church, which was brought in by a man called Reverend Hope Maston Waddell in 1846 at the time, in Duketown. Earlier than any other time, say in the map. You can see Ikotipene, you can see Etinam, you can see Okoyon, you can see all that parts that were established at the time, earlier than, Calabar was earlier than any other times. So we have also other explorers and traders that came also. Now we have a man called William Bafford Beckey, we have Richard Lander. I'm going to tell you a bit about these people a bit. And now let me tell you about a man called Dr. William Bafford Beckey. He was the man that introduced quinine as a cure for malaria at the time. When he came to the eastern part of Nigeria at the time, eastern western part of Nigeria, he introduced quinine as a cure of malaria because a lot of these guys were dying. So he introduced quinine as a cure for malaria, of course. Now we have great explorers also who traced the river from the desert down to the confluence, the tributaries to the Atlantic Ocean. These guys, about 30 of them were trained with sponsorship from people like Queen Victoria, of England at the time. So she sponsored this set of people under the auspices of the African Association. Their main aim is just to trace the river to get to the confluence and the tributaries to the Atlantic Ocean. So Bongo Park and the other guys, started tracing till they got to Busa, present Niger State, where he died. The other explorers, traced till they got to the confluence and the tributaries to the Atlantic Ocean. Before now, the Europeans already had hoisted their flag, had already established a relationship with people from West Africa, Nigeria in particular. And, it was, they in that process signed treaties with some wonderful chiefs, both trade and protection treaties. We have chiefs like Seraki Williams of Lagos, we have King Jaja of Opobo, we have Oba Baroem of Benin, we have Nana of Sekiri. All of these chiefs, of course, were involved in this agreement. After a while, there was this argument or this problem of course, not equality. I'll use the word. They had a problem, so now revolted. Now, on that process, they were captured and brought to Old Calabar and tried. King Jaja was exiled to the West Indies. Oba Baroem, before they captured him, there was a war in the Benin Kingdom that took over 3 years, and then he was captured in 1897 and brought to the prison and kept. So if you still have time, I'll take you to the prison and show you, all of that. And also we have Nana Sekiri, who was exiled to Ghana. But before he went there, he spent most of his time here in Nigeria before he went to Ghana. That's why, of course, the Ghanaians called him Nana. And still, still in vogue. Now, one interesting thing about Baroem of Benin, he was the 35th chief at the time. And when he was released, he never went back. He got married to an Efekoman and gave birth to a lot of children in Calabar. And of course, he died there later. So we are at the other section called the Scramble for Africa. After a while, the interest in Africa grew because of the natural resources she had. So there was this great fight with different international bodies. We have the French, the Liverpool, the British, the Germans, and all of that, the Spanish and the Dutch. So it became a problem who to dominate and who to get that what. Yeah. So it was a problem. So because of that problem, there was an international conference in Germany called the Berlin Conference, to dissolve such issues. And now, of course, obviously, everyone brought his document, like the British brought their document because they had already signed treaties and they had documents, with local chiefs. So they brought all of these documents to prove that Nigeria or a part of West Africa belonged to them. So at this conference, everybody, submitted their reports or their documents to prove that. So after the deliberation, of course, the British won and still got Nigeria as part of as one of their colonies, So in that process, of course, they established this building, and the first man that lived here at the time when this building was bought, his name was Consul Hewitt, So in the process, like I told you earlier on, they had this document, they had signed, treaties they had signed with our local chiefs, which of course made us a colony to the British. So I'm going to tell you a brief story about these chiefs that signed treaties with them. Now, these guys, it was difficult for the British to rule the people directly. So they went through the chiefs, our chiefs. Now, these chiefs were warrants, they were given warrants, of course, they were called the warrant chiefs. So it was easier for the British to rule through our chiefs because our chiefs knew more about the people than the British people. So it was easier. That's where the indirect rule came about. So we have names like Daniel Henshaw, we have Kokobasi, we have Young Brace, we have Long John. And all of these guys were just the local or warrant chiefs at the time. Now, the French were not happy. They said, if you allow the British to rule you, this is obviously what they're going to do to you. Because they've told you some good adverts about their drinks I showed you earlier on. They're going to take a lot of it. And I'm going to also show you a label, some of the bottles given to our chiefs. Now, it was boldly written African. So they know what they will give to you and what they will take. So they will give you a lot of these drinks because they've told you they are purifiers and they are appetizers. So you take a lot of it. As you're taking it, they'll be exploiting you take your natural resources, your mineral resources. At the end of the day, you want to fight back. You know, when you look back and you don't have any of those, you want to fight back, there'll be someone to preach to you that you need to forget the past. Now, this talks about the major reasons why the Europeans came, or let's say the British, you know. So first they came to trade, they came to rule, and they brought about Christianity. This was the Union Jack at the time. The sign of kinship, we came by sea, then we paid allegiance to the King of England, later the Queen of England, before we had our national anthem. Yes, welcome to the second part of the tour. Now we have a very beautiful structure here called a search window.
Okay.
Yes, this was used to monitor their ship. Of course, that's why you have the river there, called the Calabar River. And the settlement you see down, it's called Old Calabar. So while they were here, they monitored, like I said, monitor their ship coming and going out. There used to be a free flow from here. This, if you go downstairs, you see the frontage of building. There used to be a flow from here down to the river. You know, that's why there's a bell there. Anytime the ship comes, the bell will be rung for servants or whoever it was to run down to get the cargo and come up. So that was why this was made. This is a wonderful statement, Cross River region, nature and culture. We're going to talk about the region in Cross River, what makes up the region in Cross River. We have places like Cameroon, Akwa Ibom, Cross River itself, Ebonyi, Benue, Enugu, Anambra, Imo, Rivers, and Abia that makes up the region. What's so unique about this region? Now, this is to actually debunk the fact that that before now it was said that Africans don't have a past, don't have a history. So this, because the objects we have are quite an indication that there was a past, there was a history, you know, and this objects are real evidence because it has the markings and CBD markings on them. It's real evidence that our people had a culture, they had a past. Yes, a history basically. And these things we're going to see in different bits. And all of these objects have been carbon dated. And they've been carbon dated from the 5th to the 15th century before the Europeans. So that's what I call this, this statement or this exhibition a pre-colonial exhibition. So we have this vessel called the ritual pots. Now, this ritual pots have the markings I told you earlier on. Has the arcs, have the figure of a man and a male or a female. We have the manillas. We have lizards. We have crocodile. Now, all of these things represent the CBD I told you about. All embedded on these ritual pots. Now, some of these vessels were used for ritual purposes, like when this was excavated, it was excavated around the burial ground. So it was believed that when kings or chiefs die, they die as an offering, you know. So when it was excavated so many years ago, that was the reports we had on. We learned that most of these vessels were fabricated by, or largely made by women. So that means women were no novice to the interventions like this or this technology, you know. And since there were no cameras, like beautiful cameras we have these days, you know, beautiful hairdo or hairstyles were represented of figurines like this. You can see different figurines like this. Now, the reason for this is so that in the second burial of the queen's mother, or the queen herself, you know, things like this were brought, you know, to show respect for her or the daughter. So this was what was used at the time. A very wonderful pots is ceremonial pots, you know, used to store palm wine and also for occasions to serve palm wine to visitors. And this has a culture of people from the Efok. This is a stone monolith. It's called a Kwanshi, means ancestors in the ground. Now, this is a culture from people from Ikom, the stone monoliths. And now the question we ask is, what did these people use in carving this object? This is a stone made of limestone. Is the signature or signs are usually found on vessels like the terracottas and also the monoliths. And they can also be found on their walls and also on their clothes called the okara. Yes, because of course it talks more about their culture. Now you can see different vessels with the Nsibidi signature on them. And we have now people from this region were predominantly farmers, hunters, and fishermen. So whatever they made use of were fabricated by them. So you have all of these objects fabricated by these people. Whatever they needed, they had to fabricate them or make them to suit their need at the time. So all of these were created. Now this is a thatch house, a simple village lifestyle, cultural lifestyle these people had. You can see how the setting was. You see their fire setup. You see their native umbrella. You can see their nets or woven baskets to keep late. You can see their mats and also different things. We will have their native broom to drive away flies from their society. Now, these people from this region entertain themselves with different films, through music, festival, masquerade dancing, all of so they have a lot of fun. So they were not so primitive that they didn't enjoy their life. So they had different instruments that were used to convey their feelings. Like they said, music is a creative expression of the mind. So in expressing that, they had instruments like the local guitar that was used. They had drums, they had gongs, they had musical pots. They have beautiful instruments like the wooden rattle and the basket rattle. They had the flutes that were used, you know. Now we have this special one called the Monekin. Now Mon means child, now Kim means court. Now of course we put together as child circumcision. Now this is predominant in girls, like I said, child circumcision. So this is where a maiden goes through the fattening process. She's taught how to take care of herself, the values and all that. And when she comes out, of course, the circumcision takes place, you know, the female genital mutilation. So she comes out to beautiful dress, like so. The cultural people from Akampa local government. So the popular Calabar dance, they can be done. Now we practiced African traditional religion at the time. So some of these objects were for different reasons. Some for entertainment, some for social control, and some for religious purpose. So we have the Ekpo masquerade. Of course, Ekpo gives reference to the dead revisiting the living. So we have all of that. So now, it's believed that Ekpo is for the BBO, the Ekpe is for the Efok, you know. So we have this beautiful, we'll call it beautiful. We have we have this masquerade called the Ekpo, means mother of all masquerades. Now she comes out on, or this masquerade comes out on special occasion, especially the enthronement of a king, or the death of a king. So it gives you an announcement. If you're not an initiated member or part of them, you don't come out. When you come out, of course, you receive a punishment. And we have other ones for entertainment, like in the door. That's the children.
Okay.
For entertainment. So we have them that way. And we have the Janus mask or the double face mask, used during the coronation of a king. Now, it has different interpretation. Now, some quarters have said it simultaneously, tells or brings the past and the future together. And also it's a gender issue where you have, because we have the darker force for the male, the lighter force for the female. So whoever is the king, we must carry these people along, So we have this double face, we have this mask, the head mask. Talks about the dexterity of people from the upper cross river, because they are great farmers and hunters. So special events, they're dressed up in this way to show how powerful and how creative they were at the time. So that's why it's covered with both animal skin and other structures. Now we also have initiation for women. This from Iboki. It's a head mask during the initiation of a new member, especially a female member. This is the culture of the people from Boki. Now, also from Oron, we have this object, the ancestral figure called Ekpu. Now, this figure, when a king dies, especially when he's a prominent chief, when he dies, things like this are carved. His image is represented on a wooden structure like this and kept in the ancestral shrines. So they commemorate or celebrate their chiefs in a wooden structure like this. So this was kept in their ancestral shrines. So people started stealing them because it's over 200 years. But this was given to the museum to still maintain the culture of the people from Oron.
Okay.
Now, we have people from the riverine area have this to deal with. They appease it for protection and for better fishing. And during special harvests, Bomba harvest, this object called the Ophium is celebrated. Now, for the Igbo people, we have the Ekanga. Now, after a while, this structure now expanded outward. That's why even the teeth we have the Kenga. Yeah, this area talks about royalty, and a settlement in Calabar is divided into 3 ethnic groups. We have the Kors, we have the Efok, and the Fots. Now, all of these settlers have, or these kings, or these ethnic groups have their chiefs or their kings. Like for the Kors, their chief or their primary ruler is called Mindidem of the Kors. For the Efok, they have theirs as the Obong of Calabar. For the Foot, they have theirs as the Mori Munene. So all of these chiefs, they are just wonderful to handle cases in their regions or in their own settings, and they having these signatures on the Okara clothes behind them. Now, what does Ekpe mean? The reason why it was not totally abolished because of the impact it had on Christianity. It was believed that at the time, things like this, the Ekpe will drive people to church. They refuse to go to church, And also when you have problems of dispute lands and properties, this is always there to settle such issues or place embargoes on dispute lands and properties. So this area talks about external influence. Of course, I told you that before now, they started coming from the 15th century. So when they came, the Europeans came, British particular, and the Portuguese and other European powers that came, introduced a lot of things to our space. As we have the three-legged ports. We have companies that were formed, like United African Company, the Royal Company. We had the Lebanese and other West African leaders that came and established businesses down Duketown, at the time. And also we have the Elder Dempster. This was a shipping line that was established at the time. And because of the power behind, of course, it was established in 1859, thereabout. It was established then to ease the transatlantic triangular trade at the time, and also to ship humans and goods from one place to another, basically in West Africa, between Liverpool and West Africa. And because of this, later it became or metamorphosed not to the Nigerian Navy, but the Nigerian National Shipping Line, of course, but the mine died later. There was a law or a taboo for people around this area that a woman cannot give birth to more than one, that it was the evil spirits or evil offspring at the time. So if a woman gives birth to more than one, the children were taken, because it was believed that one of the child was carrying the evil spirit. So in deciding which one was, the children were kept in pots for animals to devour. So you can see that. So when a lady called Mary Mitchell Slessor came at the age of 28 years, she came and rescued a lot of these people, precisely in 1876. So when she came, she rescued a lot of these children. You can see the portrait of that. And she established her home at Okoyon and other places. And also you can see her handling court cases. And also you can see the children she rescued. Now, I was taking a tour last month, and her great-grandchild said her mother just died. She was the last surviving twins that was saved by Mary Slessor at the time. Her name was Belinda, but they call her Becky. She died at the age of 115 at the time. A point to note, Mary Slessor died January 13, 1915. That's why every January 13 she's always celebrated. So don't forget that. Now, this is the European setting, of course, where they have the typewriter, they have the table calendar, they have the ball pen, they have the ink. Of course, they had the stamp and the telephone for communication, because when they came, like I said earlier on, Consul Hewitt was the first man that lived here. We had other people. The last person was Egerton. Egerton lived here. Now, while they were here, upstairs were their rooms, downstairs were the offices. So downstairs, some of these items were found downstairs when they came at the time. So this area talks about the road to independence. We have people like Margaret Ekpo. Of course, the airport presently is named after her. She was a very strong lady who was part of the movement, for the Aba riots, women riots. Now, because of the high taxation, she was part of the frontier, of course, part of the people that fought for that. And she was the first woman, in parliament. And also she advocated for more women, or participation of more women into politics. So she introduced all of that. And there was a time, she bought the whole salt in the community. And the reason she bought all of that, because she wanted women to be part of politics. Now, for every woman that bought the salt, must be ready to be part of politics. So that was what she did. So women became actively involved in politics at the time. So that's her. And we also have Herbert Macaulay, who was the great-grandson of Samuel Ajayi Crowther. We have Obafemi Awolowo. We have the Sardauna of Sokoto, Hamadu Bello. We have Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. We have the first and the only prime minister after the British left, Sir Alhaji Tafawa Balewa.
From the Slave Trade Museum down to the Old Residency Museum, history speaks, reminding us that remembrance is not just about the past, but reshaping the future.
As we honor Slave Remembrance Day, may we never forget and may we always remember. This is brought to you by Unical 103.5 FM, your #1 Edu infotainment radio station.
Keep it locked.